Welcome to the Humans Outside podcast, where we are building a life around getting outdoors through learning from fascinating outside-minded guests. I'm Amy Bouchatz, a journalist originally from the beach in California, now working to love nature from my home in Alaska. Since September 2017, I've spent at least 20 consecutive minutes outside every single day, no matter the weather. On this show, we hear from others who make heading into nature just a part of who they are while we work to do the same. If you love what we do, you can support Humans Outside on Patreon or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Ready for the good stuff? Let's go. So you want to start something new, going outside every day, no matter the weather. Maybe you think what I do, that 20 minutes sounds great. Maybe you think any time will be more than you have now. Or maybe you think 20 minutes is a little wussy and you want to do more. For this and any other change in your life, you have to develop a habit. And you've probably been here before, deciding to add something new to your life or removing something from it, full of resolve, only to find after a few days or a week that there are plenty of reasons to not do this awesome sounding thing. If we're talking about heading outside a little each day, those things could easily be that you are busy or that the weather is terrible or that the couch is nicer or there are just things that sound better in that moment. And that's where learning how to develop a habit comes in. Figuring out how to make that happen for you is a journey, a trip, if you will. And for that, we have today's guest. Sarah Hays Coomer is a Mayo Clinic certified wellness coach, a certified personal trainer who has focused on her career on changing the way humans think about their bodies and presence and relation to the world. She's written 3 books, including The Habit Trip, a fill-in-the-blank journal to a life on purpose. And today, she's going to talk to us about building habit and how heading outside fits into it. Sarah, welcome to the Humans Outside podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Amy.
So we like to imagine ourselves in our guest's favorite outdoor space. Now, I am in Alaska, you're in Nashville, Tennessee. But if we were going to imagine ourselves somewhere with you, where would that be?
So I have a spot at the very top of Griffith Park in Los Angeles, California, where I go to. Even now, I fly back there and go to that spot every single time I'm in Los Angeles because it grounds me every single time. You can perch and you can see all the way to the ocean. You can see downtown, the whole display, and it's a beautiful place to think.
I love that that you use the word grounding, because isn't that just, like we have these spaces that we go back to, that's how it feels. It's like, okay, we're good.
Yeah, it really, this year has been tough because I haven't been able to get back there. It really is the spot. It's like a pilgrimage, and I go there every year, at least once a year, if not more, if I can.
Yeah. Well, your journey to who you are today, even how you ended up in Los Angeles, has a lot to do with recognizing the power of spending time outside in nature. Can you tell us about that and how you became someone who likes to go outside?
Yeah, so I started out as, originally I was in the arts. I was a singer-songwriter, I was in theater, and I struggled a lot. This was in my late teens, early 20s, even into my mid-20s, really, really struggling with body image and eating disorders and depression, anxiety, all of that stuff. And as I was living in Los Angeles, I was working a day job in human resources, and I was just, I was exhausted. I was tired of getting up in the morning every day, hating the body that I was in. And the only way that I had found to find peace was to step outside. It actually started even earlier when I was living in New York City. I would go to Central Park and literally just stare at the leaves, just to find some sort of peace and, like you say, grounding. And so in Los Angeles, I live near Griffith Park, and I discovered that if I went up there every single day, sometimes I could only bring myself through that fog to make it just up that first little hill, which would be 10, 15 minutes, and then turn right back around and come back home. But other days I would get going, I would get over that hump, and then I would go for, 2 or 3 hours. And I became aware that the days that I wanted to go the least were the ones that I needed to go the most. And it was literally a form of therapy that I believe saved my life. So that spot I would return to again and again and again, and it changed me. and it changed my career path and everything else in my life. So that was really where it started.
We're going to talk about habit here in a second, but I just really resonate with this idea that the days you don't want to are the days you do need to. And it's, for what I do, and what some of our listeners do, which is just this minimum 20 minutes, could be more, right? Uh, it is that. Like, that's exactly right. The days I'm like, oh my, what? Like, my personal, like, biggest hated weather, like most hated weather is rain. Okay, so I just like don't like being wet. Like, how is this so hard to understand? Okay, so the days that it's like 45 degrees and just bleh, are the days that I'm like, I really don't want to do this. But guess what? The weather is also impacting my attitude
Uh-huh, of course.
inside.
Yep.
And maybe it's impacting how I see myself, and maybe it's impacting how I'm interacting with other people.
Mhm.
Maybe it's impacting the tremendous amount of coffee I'm now drinking, right? Like, all of these things are reasons, or the time I'm spending, sucked into social media, into that spiral, right? Like, all of these reasons are great reasons to go outside on the day that I least want to. Oh,
Right.
I hear that so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. And I heard your podcast recently about, standing outside, drinking your coffee for 5 minutes and saying, okay, that's not going to be enough. I'm
Yeah.
going to need more than that. So, and then you learn, what happens when you push through that and get past it. You have a very specific, parameter around the goal that you have set. And once you learn how pushing past that benefits you every time you do it, it gets a lot easier to keep going even in the rain.
It does. And also, it's a practice, right?
Yeah,
So you learn over time that what makes it better than other days,
right,
right? Like, not every day of doing this thing not every day of your hike was high quality,
right.
right? I'm
No,
sure there was times you were distracted or thinking about something else, or, for me, some of my outdoor times, not high quality, right? It's, I might have my phone with me. That's really the biggest killer. Like,
yeah, yeah,
or I'm just thinking about something stressful, or I'm doing my outdoor time in a non-ideal space. So, like, theory is any outdoor time is better than no outdoor time.
right.
But if you had to pick a walk in the woods or a stroll in the drop-off area of the airport, which do you think is better,
Right,
right?
right. Yeah.
So, arguably, the stroll in the drop-off area is better than staying in the airport, but it's a sliding scale.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
No, I've done that too. I've walked outside of airports and just stood with my face in the sun just for a
yep.
minute just to get that vitamin D and that little boost. It actually is really quite lovely. It can be if you can just focus your attention on what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and ignore the exhaust,
Right,
ignore the
right.
exhaust.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so let's just dive in. I'm really excited to talk about your book and the journey of creating habits, which is really, your book is a journey. It's not, for our listeners who haven't read it, I hope you do. It's not written as so much a how-to habit book, although it does address those things, so much as literally like a guided meditation with journaling towards building a habit. Am I describing it well? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a storybook. It's a fantasy
Mm,
world storybook inspired by, Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein. So you dive into this fantasy world where you are the expert and the hero in your own story, and you get to fill it out as you go to learn and make it your own story. So it's a fun, strange adventure.
yeah. So, but first, before we talk about like this journey and some of this other stuff, I want to level set a little bit, and touch on sort of the nuts and bolts overview of habit formation, right? Just
Right.
like, what do we need to know about forming a habit? So, what do experts say? What have you found about how, and as an expert yourself, about the how of developing a new habit?
So there's a couple of things. First, before you can even begin to develop a new habit, you need to know where you are. You need to know what you need. You need to know what feels out of whack, and then sort of drill down into the nitty gritty of that, which is what the first part of the book does. And then once you have heightened that awareness and remove some of the judgment around it, so it's not being part of a guilt cycle, which is really a common way that people get tripped up. Then you're looking for three elements. which there's a great book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg that I quote in the book, where he really outlines all of this stuff. So you're looking at the cue, what is triggering the habit, what happens right before it, where are you, who are you with, what are the circumstances around this thing that keeps happening again and again and again that you don't want to happen. And then the routine, which is the habit itself. um, and by the way, this happens with both positive and negative habits. So it's, you can look, you can sort of dig into these little details for both so that, again, you can remove that guilt from it. So then you're in the actual habit, which is the routine. And then the last part, which is the reward, which is the payoff. So the habits that we have in our lives are there for a reason. They're there because in the past, we have gotten some sort of payoff from them, some sort of relief or positive reward. So even if it's a habit that is no longer serving you, it's something that's there because in the past it has done something for you. So if you can figure out what's the cue, what's causing it, and then what are you getting out of it, you can replace that middle step, which is the actual routine. So if there's a need that's being filled somehow, you can find other healthier ways to fill that need.
I understand. I want to talk about all of those things. I want to focus back on understanding what you need, because I think that this is a really critical step. Like, I'm sure you think this too, because you've built a career on this. This is a really critical step that's not always talked about in habit books. Like habit experts that I've read and heard often sort of skip this part, right? They're just like, we're writing this with the assumption that you already know what you want to do. But as you noted with guilt, right? Like the good idea fairy, in the military community, that's a phrase we use, right? It's the good idea fairy is like this person or fairy that presents things that seem really good in that moment or sound good to one person, but aren't necessarily good for everyone or good overall. Okay. So the good idea fairy could be something that's like, I want to go on a really restrictive diet on January 1st, right? And now everyone is doing it. So why wouldn't you do it? Or like all these people who, and I've definitely done this in the past too, go back to the gym, like, oh, I'm going to get really healthy. And then you can wait 15 days and the gym will be empty.
Yeah.
And I wonder if those people, and myself when I've done this, because I'm like a junkie for challenges. I think everyone here knows that. Like somebody's like, "Ooh, I'm doing a challenge." I was like, "Ooh, a challenge," and it doesn't even have to be anything in my goal list. Like it's a siren song for me,
right?
And I've had to develop a habit of saying no. But part of that is understanding what I need. So talk to us about that. How do you know what you need?
Yeah, so it's a skill. And like you were talking earlier about having a practice. So like so there are a number of exercises in the book to help you try to figure that out. But what you're doing is, so I start at the beginning of the book by placing you in this world where you have what we call a body house. And I start talking about how maybe the paint is a little chipped on the outside and starting to peel off. And, do you need a power washer to get that off, or do you need a little spackle scraper? Like what are the pain points that you're dealing with? So you're in your body house, and then we jump into this orb, which is basically, I don't know if you've ever seen images of people rolling around in the countryside, where they're like bouncing into each other and bouncing into mountainsides and things like that. So those are big plastic means of transportation. And that resonated with me a lot. I talked a lot about that with my groups in my last book tour. And it made me feel like this is what we're doing every day. We're sort of bouncing off of things and trying to get our footing and just feeling like we're tumbling head over feet. So the whole construct of the book is about building an infrastructure inside of this orb. So you are finding solid footing. You're finding bars to hang on to. You've got padding to protect your head. All of these little elements that you can build to support. So these are the habits you're trying to build. And then we travel through these 10 areas of life that impact our well-being. So as you think about how do I find out what I really need the most. We look at these 10 areas of well-being in a playful way, just getting a kind of a snippet of what's working and what's not. And then we distill those into 3 lists, which are, these are the things that I'm just not even going to deal with this right now. I can't even deal with it. These are the ones that are working great. And then these are the 1 or 2 that are not feeling right. And they're feeling like things that I can actually address, that I really want to address. So you can
Mm-hmm.
find what is drawing you forward. Where is your curiosity peaked? Where does what you need marry with what you love? And how can you pursue those things in either micro or macro ways? So we just kind of you have to get that lay of the land. And a big part
Yeah.
of that is breathing. So as you work through this stuff, and going outside helps with that a lot, you can get perspective and get a practice of getting perspective so that you can tell, hey, I started this challenge and I was really super into it for like 3 days. And also, no, it's not me. It's not working for me. It doesn't feel good. That way, instead of persisting and beating yourself up for extended periods of time, you can go, no, actually, I'm not really into that and I'm moving on. And then you can find something else that works for you better. So that breath, that step away and perspective is really important.
I just love this because like I just said, I think that that we frustrate ourselves with not being able to form habits because we are not giving the process the consideration and thought that it needs.
Yeah.
And then we think we can't form habits because we didn't do the homework first, or we didn't decide, like we just didn't set the stage.
Yeah, and we don't give ourselves the authority to
Mm,
make a decision. Like this is not actually what I want. I'm not actually looking to lose 20 pounds. Like that number is arbitrary. What I'm looking for is energy and freedom and reduction of pain and all of those things. What is it that we're actually going for and how do those things get built into our lives?
right. Oh, that makes so much sense. Hey humans! You know from listening to the podcast that I am a super busy entrepreneur with a full-time job, and that I make getting outside for that at least 20 minutes a day happen every day by making sure I'm not spending time doing stuff that should be done by someone else. That's why I hired Eden Law to help me get humans outside on lock. Led by attorney Rachel Brinke, who you heard from in season 2, Eden Law helped me get humans outside into the trademark process to protect all the hard work I've done. But unlike other firms that do this, everything I did with them was online and designed to save me time and money while also done with incredible expertise. I am so happy I invested in that. If you've got a business you're running, it's 100% worth it to link up with Rachel and her Eden Law trademark team at eden-law.com. Now, back to the show. So, where does going outside, you touched on this just a second ago, but I want you to expand on it if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Where does going outside fit into understanding what you need?
So, one of the areas of well-being that we talk about is space. And
Mm,
that means your environment. That means where you spend the minutes of your days. And when we get into these boxes of our physical environment, um, they limit the way that we can perceive ourselves and our lives. So if we can step out of that and breathe some fresh air, and there's all kinds of studies about this now. If you've quoted them on your podcast many times. They're now, doctors are prescribing forest bathing or
mm,
outside
mhm.
time as literal physiological therapies. So when we do that, we are able to release our breath, release our diaphragms, open up our chests, get vitamin D, strengthen our bones, our joints. All of these things are so micro, they're so tiny, but over time, if they happen again and again and again, they change your brain.
Hmm.
So they change the way you see yourself and your place in the world and your family and your community and ultimately global interests from there. It just grows and grows.
So, you mentioned the different like your space, and you have these, I think it was 10 different
Yeah.
areas in the book.
Hmm.
Okay. So when I was reading that, I'm thinking about going outside because apparently that's what I do all day long. Um
Not a bad thing to think about.
Not a bad thing to think about. That's what we've gotten to, guys. Just a warning: if you keep going outside, that's what's going to happen to you. Uh, what some of the other areas are play. You had fitness in there, and it's just some other things that I thought, this also corresponds
Yeah.
with going outside, right? Like
Mhm.
when I'm outside, sometimes I'm playing, right? When I'm going outside, I'm exercising.
Yeah.
It was just an interesting intersection for me.
Yep. Yep. And there's other, people is one. So how are you spending time with
Mhm.
other people outside?
Yeah.
And spirit and finding your voice, all of those things. Yeah. And even things like money. Money's another one. So, what happens to the way that you perceive your career or your next step in your life, to build your bank account and your outreach and your connections and networking and all of those things. I always get ideas about
Hmm.
who to reach out to or another project to do or a blog post to write or whatever, always reliably when I am outside.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I didn't even think I had totally breezed by finance. When I was thinking about this, I was like, "Oh, money, that doesn't have anything to do with this."
Yeah,
But you're right.
yeah.
That's so good. Okay, so one of the things you talk about is based on research that the key to success in habit building is reward, and you touched on this earlier.
Right.
What can you unpack that a little bit? What does that mean? What is this reward? Because for someone like me who's struggled with food stuff my whole life, I know you understand this as a wellness coach. When I hear reward, I think cake.
Right.
So
Well, someday you and I
that's
can sit down for a piece of cake.
yeah. But
Because I
like
love
that's
cake.
probably, like, oh good, we did this thing, we get snacks now. Maybe that's part of being a runner too. Like, oh, like I did this, I'm so hungry. But anyway, neither here nor there. What do you mean by reward?
Reward can be anything. I mean, people know that, like, if you brush your teeth every day, you wake up feeling less, gross in the morning. That is a
Sure.
reward. When any habit that you have in your life, the reason you're sticking with it is because there is a payoff in the end. There is something that you're getting out of it. So you're reducing fatigue, you're reducing anxiety, you're finding relief somehow, you're finding peace. Your blood pressure goes down. Your body changes when you have some sort of reward. And of course, these things happen too with bad habits or things that we don't. I don't like calling them good or bad, but unhelpful habits. Over time, really the reward is the key to the thing. So if you can find, okay, this is the habit that I'm doing again and again and again that I don't like. I am watching TV at night and snacking excessively. What is it doing for you? What is it providing for you? And what is another way that you can get that aim? So if it's, stress reduction, if it's distraction, if it's the only time of the day that you allow yourself to put work down, what are the ways that you can still get that reward in a different way? And then there's some work involved in the initial process. You've got some inertia going, to get moving. But then once you're moving, you keep moving with it because you're still
Mm.
getting the reward and you're feeling better about it. So there is a little bit of effort, and friction there. But if you can find a way to really reinforce that reward and stay focused on that, that is the thing that will keep pulling you forward.
Yeah. So as you're talking, I remembered in Gretchen Rubin's Happiness Project book, she talks about giving herself gold stars, I think. So the reward doesn't have to be like psychological. Like you can literally reward yourself by coloring in a gold star. And this is actually why people like habit trackers. We have some of those on Humans Outside. I've got a 30-day and a 31-day because not every month is created equally.
Right.
Habit tracker if people want to do just a month, or I've got a 365-day one, and they're designed like you color in the thing. Heck, you could print that bad boy out. The 30-day one and 31-day ones, all these are free, by the way, are pictures of leaves for the winter season. And if you don't like coloring, just cross those bad boys off.
Right.
I'm a big fan of just a simple calendar. I'm a list. I like a list, guys. Can't lie to you. So there you go. That's my reward, right? I make a list every day, and the reward is that wonderful feeling of the pen across the page. Sounds crazy unless you do
No.
it. I promise it's a thing.
Yeah, no, that's a
So
real sense of accomplishment. Yeah.
yeah. Y'all listening to this, I know some of you out there write stuff down after you've already done it, just so you can cross it off. I cannot be alone on this.
No, I'm
So,
sure.
but that's the reward,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's the beauty of this book doesn't tell you do this XYZ. It tells
Mm.
you how to find the thing that's going to work for you, that's going to make you feel rewarded. So, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. That would be yours. That's awesome.
What is the role of reflection in
Oh.
keeping a habit? You talk a lot about this, so I can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah, so there's a process, a practice that I talk about a lot in the book, which is listen, breathe, respond. So, a lot of times, what we do is we have a knee jerk response to something. So, you've got cue routine, you've got the thing that triggers you, and then you've got the response. And so, if we can learn, practice, create a way of divorcing the cue from the routine and creating a tiny little space in between them, then we have the ability to decide and we
Mm.
can make a different choice, especially if we know we're going to get the same reward in the end. So, that space in between, you can't change anything if you don't have awareness. There's no chance. You're on autopilot. We are animals, you know? So we have this beautiful consciousness that other animals don't have, that we can see what's happening, pause, and then make another choice. Now, sometimes that pause can be as small as a breath. And sometimes
Mm.
that breath could be 20 minutes outside. It could be an hour outside. It could be any kind of routine. It's like, I remember back in the 80s and 90s, there was like a thing about for dieting. There was a thing around dieting where you would wear a rubber band around your wrist and just snap it. Like snap it, or eat an ice cube, or
Yeah. The
hang.
things we do to ourselves, guys.
Right. Hang upside down on the couch, like things that will upend your brain a little bit and just give you that moment. Now, I like to build those in a more peaceful, rewarding sort of a way. But yeah, so anything that allows you to make space
Mm.
between the impulse and the response, I think is really, really helpful.
And it's also, I wonder if it's taking time to examine why, like if you have done the work to determine that a habit is good for you. Let's say you've looked at your day. Yeah, I think going outside every day would be helpful for me. And now you're doing it and it's really much harder than you thought it would be.
Mm.
Having that space to say, why is that true? Like, why is this easy for some people, but not for me? Like what practical or physiological or whatever things are standing in my way. Maybe it's, here in Alaska, and I've heard this quite a lot recently because it's winter everywhere. The problem is that I'm cold.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like being cold. Like I hear that a lot actually. Like I don't want to go outside. I don't like being cold. Well, guess what? We have solutions for that.
Yeah.
You don't have to be cold.
Yeah.
You just have to spend you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to make it happen. But if you want to do this, there are ways to address this problem. And now, guys, I have become like the most extra outdoor user in the land because I wear so many layers now. I've completely given up on being cold.
Yeah.
You know what? No one's getting an award or prize for being cold. There are no prizes for this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be warm, and I wear I look like a walking sleeping bag at this point, like a ginormous human marshmallow, because I have so much puffy jackets and layers, and I've got the, like, who is that? No, it's Amy. That's how you know, because then, if I'm in public, I got the face mask, it's just my eyes and marshmallow clothes.
Right.
But man, am I happy,
Totally.
so.
Yeah. 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 And the thing is, when you talk about like, why is it so hard for me? Like, that is, first of all, you're working on perspective and awareness right there. You're looking at what
Okay.
the obstacles are, and you're finding creative solutions to overcome them. But the thing that's pulling you forward, so there are 2 chapters in the book about what matters. Why does it matter to you? What are your values? What is I call it like a magnet that's pulling you forward, or what is your North Star that is pulling you, that you are aching to fill in your life? What are these core values that you have? There's a whole chapter where you figure those out. And then what are the strengths that come to you like easy like melted butter, that you can just lean on. Like, okay, here's the problem. I'm cold. That's why I don't want to go outside, but I want to go outside because it feeds these values that I hold. And so, what are my strengths in figuring that out? You're a list maker, right? You're a detail oriented person. So, you went in and you figured out, okay, the problem is I'm cold. And so, these are the ways that I can solve that. So, it's really, you can find those tools, and they're not, once you know what they are, they're easy to lean on because they've always come naturally to you. It's not like I'm asking you to do something that's completely out of the box.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so good. And it's a muscle, right? Like,
Yeah.
doing this makes you do it more.
Yep.
So talk to us a little bit about that. How does the act of successfully developing one new habit
Mm.
help you develop other new habits?
Yeah. So this is a clinical term called self-efficacy. It
Oh, that's a big
means,
word.
yeah, it means that you have not, you have learned that you are capable.
Hmm.
And once you know that for a fact, then you believe that you are capable of doing other things. So it has
Hmm.
a snowball effect, and it just grows from there. But so many of us are caught in this cycle of feeling like a failure and being unable to complete things and being focused all on that. So that's why I talk about microdosing wellness
Hmm.
in the book a lot, because if you take on a small habit that feels good, that you want to do, and you learn over time, however long it takes you, a week or a month or 3 months or a year, that you are capable of doing it because you like it and because it feeds what matters to you, then you'll go, oh, I was able to do that and I can do something else. And you start to have this natural pull forward, so that
Hmm.
it's not like you're clawing and scraping your way forward. You're hungry for it.
Hmm.
So it's really
Maybe
fun.
that's where that 5 minutes comes in. Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier that part of my story is that I did this initial challenge where I just was like, I'm going to go outside every day, no rules, just go,
Yeah.
see how that goes.
Hmm.
And one of those days was really literally just, I should find the picture from that day. I take a picture every day. It's how I log it.
Oh, nice.
Because I thought, oh,
I
maybe
like
I'll
that.
journal, but no, I'm not a journaler. I mean, I'm a journaler, but that's not going to happen every day. Let's be
Yeah.
real. But I will take a picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so I take a picture every day. There was literally one of those days. I mean, we're talking in the summertime. It's not 50 below or anything, that I was like, it's raining. And I stood on my porch. It had to have been towards night too.
Uh-huh.
Like the end of the day, like I forgot, and I
Right.
stood there with like tea or something, and I got wet for a minute and went back inside. Couldn't have been more than maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But that taught me that I could do it.
Yeah.
So maybe when if you're trying to develop a habit going outside every day, starting with less than 20 minutes, even though I think that's ideal. And I talked about that in a previous Outdoor Diary episode. So we don't need to do it here, but it's like, again, no one's getting a prize. Except for the rewards you give yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and there's no rules. Do
Yeah.
what you want.
Yeah. I love that thing about taking a picture. I actually just had a conversation last week with a client of mine who, we're in the city here. We're in the city.
Mhm.
And she has been basically afraid to leave her apartment since COVID hit. And she went outside for the first time and took a walk, and it was, I think, 10 minutes or so. But I said, send me a picture. Every time you
Mm-hmm.
go outside, send me a picture of the sky. Just take a picture. And so I just love that you do that every day. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I actually ask people. I've got a little hashtag use humans outside 365, and people can share their outdoor time all on Instagram
Yeah.
or wherever they are with that, and then we can all sort of be like, oh, fist bump, good
Right.
job, which
Yeah.
is, again, that's a reward. But I like that. I wanted to. It was an accountability for me,
Yeah.
to me, that I'm going to take and post this picture every day. Now the reality is, sometimes I get in bed at night and I'm like, oh man, like I forgot to post that. I wait the next day. Like there are no rules. We do what we want.
Right.
But I do take a picture every day to like prove to myself that I was there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so great. I want to leave people who are listening to this with some actionable steps. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about actionable stuff, a lot of practical things. Maybe you can leave us just with 2 or 3 things, help us get started with developing a new habit, whether that's outside or inside, that you can leave us with.
Yeah. So it's because it's important for you to find your own um, urgency, to find the thing that is
Mm.
really striking you as getting
Your
in.
spark.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the thing that is getting in your way that you can think about either, and I talk about macro and micro habits.
Mm-hmm.
So if the big thing is I want to change eating and watching TV before I go to bed, what are some small adjustments that you can make to that? So I don't want to go in and say, everybody should be doing X, Y, and Z, because it's unique to each one of us. But the things that we are longing for and aching for are the same. We need connection. We need to feel
Mm-hmm.
vital and alive. We need to feel awake. We need to feel like we're contributing and connecting with other people. So I would say the first step would be to pin your location, look at these 10 areas, see where you are, find out which of those 1 or 2 are feeling urgent, and
Mm.
then dig into those to see when is it happening, where is it happening, who am I with, and then what is the actual behavior, and then what am I getting out of it, and then dig around, just play. Brainstorming is my favorite thing. It's one of my favorite things. Is just literally throw stuff at the wall, just like what is it, what could it be, crazy ideas, things you've wanted to try, things you've done in the past, throw things out, and then see if there's one of those that you can just pick up that you can do. You
Mm.
can do it. You're not trying to take something away from yourself. You're just trying to add something in or switch something out that is going to make your life richer and more full and complete, and play around with that. That's another thing we didn't really touch on too much, but this idea of play and exploration, we're trying things. We're just trying
Mm.
things. And also going outside will help you do some of that brainstorming too. But try them. And if they don't work, try something else. Like there's
Yeah.
nobody's watching. Nobody's, saying like you're a big failure because this thing didn't work out. It just wasn't the right thing for you. So find the next one.
Yeah. What's another tip? Maybe one more thing we can walk away with.
Yeah, I think so. We talked about, so we're microdosing. We're
Right.
microdosing habits. We are experimenting and playing around without getting caught in the guilt cycle. Another thing is our bodies are our greatest teachers. So
Mm.
if you're really confused and you don't even know where to begin, start by thinking about when your shoulders, like pay attention to your physiology. When are your neck and shoulders tensing up? When is your pit of your
Mm.
stomach go like, oh, this does not feel good to me? That's the thing to pay attention to. Whenever that's happening, if it's a person that you're having to interact with, or a situation in your life, or a daily routine that isn't working for you, your body will tell you. So if
Yeah.
you can track over the course of a day or a week and find out where those little points are that are feeling wrong, pay a little bit more attention right there and try to figure
Yeah.
out what it is about that that's bugging you, and see if there's another way to play with it.
That's so good. I'm really glad that that you mentioned that, because that's really one of the pivotal moments where I started doing this outdoor thing, was when I noticed that within a few minutes of my walk, I was like,
Yes. Yes.
like not even meaning to, just like huge sigh. And I was like, ooh, what's that about?
Right.
And because I wasn't looking at my phone, I had the presence of mind to say, what's that about?
Right.
And then to know that, I want to do that again
Yeah. And it's
now.
available to you every day for free.
And it's available to me every day for
Yeah.
free. But I love the permission that you're giving us here, which is the term we use in hiking or training is to scale in,
Yep.
right? So you're not starting with 30 miles, you're
Right.
starting with 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So
And it can stay,
that
like, if
permission.
you never get that urge to move beyond 1 or 2, it can stay
Mm,
there and your life will change because of that
yeah.
1 or 2.
So good. Oh,
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Okay. We've arrived to the end. I love to ask my guests just for some leftover stuff. Call it the leftovers round, because why not? We ask our guests our favorite gear and most essential gear. But you know what? That makes it sound like it has to be like a physical object, and it so doesn't. So
Mm.
maybe you have a favorite thing that you like taking outside, or most essential. Maybe you don't. What is it if you do?
So, my favorite thing is probably, this is really dorktastic, but I have a fanny pack that allows me to bring my water effortlessly with me on my hikes. So,
You are not the first fanny pack user on the podcast.
okay, well, I haven't heard that before, but yeah. So, so I just discovered that last summer because I was so tired in the summer of having to like not like lug it in my hand. I've got 2
Yeah.
dogs, and I'm always, and the fanny pack gives dog treats, phone, and then my water bottle. So that's that.
Awesome.
Um,
Fanny packs, not just for Disney World.
you're right.
You've got
No,
it.
no, no, no. Also not for old ladies. And so, yeah. And then for essential, I have a difficult relationship with hiking boots.
Mm,
They feel really stiff to me, and I feel really sort of out of control with those. Now I'm not, scaling Mount Rainier, so it's a little bit. I have a lighter shoes, so I like to have trail runners, which
mm,
have the grip, but they're
mhm.
flexible and lighter. So that's my. And if I have something with no grip, I'm not good.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite brand you like on the Trail Runner?
No, the ones I have right now are Adidas, but they're not. I'm
Yeah.
not religious about that.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay. And finally, we're going to walk out of this envisioning with you your favorite outdoor moment. So if you close your eyes, vision yourself just in the outdoor moment that just fills you with joy and peace and all that good stuff. Where are you and what are you doing?
So I'm always at the top of a mountain whenever that happens. So whether that's on skis or having hiked, that the view that we started with in Los Angeles, or I love the Rockies, skiing at the Rockies as well. So both of those, just there's always a pause for me. There's always a sense of grounding and just feeling purposeful, even though I don't. It's not about some grand purpose. It's about being present in the moment.
Mm. Sarah, thank you so much for being on the Humans Outside podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I think what you're doing is really, really great.
That's it for this week's episode of the Humans Outside podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, give us a little love and leave a rating and review to make it easier for others to find the podcast too. And by supporting us on Patreon, you get access to exclusive supporter-only benefits while making sure we can keep the podcast going. A huge, huge thank you to our current supporters. Until next time, we'll see you out there.